We had a great chance to talk to Fight League Atlantic's Derek Clark, and now we have the man. We have not only the guy that goes in there and finishes you pretty handily, but the guy who will also talk a big game and back it the fuck up. And yes, I do swear I'm unprofessional, but we don't care here on the podcast. Christien Savoie, man, it's a pleasure to have you on. It's a pleasure to have such a killer, a finisher, a strategist here on the podcast.
Thanks for the kind words, brother. Thank you, man.
Now, talk about, because there's still a little bit of unclear for me as far as the background and where you're from exactly as far as your fighting tutelage and everything else. So I know that, you come down here and you work down in Stony Creek with Crew Alin, House of Champions. And I mean, the style, whether it's from your prior gym or where you train out there in New Brunswick as well, too, the style is very obvious as to a damaging Muay Thai style coming from sort of a House of Champions style, strategy to finish, look for the opening, look for the kill, and get it done. But talk to me about your sort of fighting background and, where your tutelage comes from and when this all started.
Yeah, so I'm kind of all over the place, man. I actually come from a Taekwondo background initially as a kid, and I did that until I was about 14 years old. So I'm a second degree black belt in Taekwondo, and I've won some good titles there. Um, Then I started my MMA journey around 14. And honestly, man, I kind of like spent time doing everything. So what I mean is like I spent some time at some Muay Thai gyms. I spent some time at some boxing gyms. So I've kind of like, and I've also traveled, man. I've been to Rufus Sport a couple times to work with Duke Rufus. I've been to City Kickboxing once. I was at TriStar for a while, so I've been all over the place, man. To be honest, and I feel like I've kind of taken like bits and pieces from everybody, and have kind of made my style out of that. And that said, like I feel like when me and Alin met, man, we like clicked right away, because it just seems like a lot of what I do is a lot of what he does, So we've got a good
He's a
match.
general, man. And when he has a killer or a frontline, like just warrior there, and I know I'm sort of, mystifying it or adding that fairy tale element to it. But the reality of the fact is that's how his strategy is. I haven't got the advantage to actually sit in and watch some of your pad work and strategy sessions as well with him too. But even when he's in there with Mike, working with Mike Malott, it's the similar style with Diana Belbita. It's going for the kill. It's working that body and opening that head up. There's so many different things that he does. It's just all damage, and I absolutely love it. Definitely appreciate it. So when did you actually hook up with Cruella? When did that happen?
Man, so he messaged me a couple years ago. I'm pretty sure he messaged me to come do if I could be part of Kyle Nelson's camp. And I couldn't come down, but anyways, that's how we initially started talking. And I took 2 years off of fighting, eh? And I remember watching Mike Malott's fight against Mickey Gall. And I saw Crew Alin in his corner. I was like, oh, I know that guy. And when I came back to fighting, man, I kind of wanted to like stay close to home-ish, even though Ontario's like a 16-hour drive, but it's a drive. And anyways, man, I just messaged him on Facebook, and we got on a phone call, and I got great vibes from him right off the bat, man. And it's like you were talking about like his style of fighting, like when I got on the phone with him, like, me being like, I don't want to call myself a vet, but a pretty experienced fighter at this point, like, I don't know, man. I need I'm more specific with my coaches, I guess, and yeah, man, him and I just seem to click right away.
That's awesome, man. I love that whole relationship. Being able to see that work in the gym, being able to see that work in the cage when you hear a coach call something out and it breaks down, strategies play out. It's just cool to see when that all comes together really nicely. So I know you come down here and you're up there as well too. Talk about your last fight, man. I mean, I know that you were off for a little bit, and Then you come back and you walk into a draw. Got to be frustrating. Got to be part of where that chip was. But you come in first round against Roberto Pixley, and you just show him what's up, and then you get on that microphone and you cut a promo. That promo, dude, that was fire. So talk about that. Talk about that finish and how good that was. That much of a release that was after all of the draw and the delay or the time away and all those things.
Oh man, it felt so good, bro. Yeah, like considering everything, and man, I had so many fights fall through on me prior to that too, and
I remember with Samurai, sorry to cut you off, but it's got to be frustrating to pretty much start a camp or be partway through a camp, start thinking about an opponent, strategizing, investing your mental into it, and then it's cut. It's got to be frustrating.
dude, and it's unfortunately it's like part of this sport, man, like in a weird way. And that's the other thing too, man, is like, like I'm an athlete who believes in like peaking for an event. And I can't even say I just believe, that's just science, right? And like, yeah, man, you put your body through all this and the weight cut and everything, right? And for the event to not happen is it's devastating, man. So that said, man, like I had anxiety all the way leading up to this fight due to all the nonsense I've been through this past year, man. And to go in there and I had a lot of pressure on my back, like felt like my back was against the wall, and to the fight couldn't have gone better. So yeah, man, very, very happy with that.
And now for you, that's actually a great sort of segue into the fact that like this is MMA minefield. That's what I do when I talk to the fighters. It's about the minefield that is an MMA fighter's mind. Yeah, we talk to other people that are sort of connected to the sport, but the fighter's minds intrigue me because a lot of the time, whether it's pent up energy that's always there that you have to get out, whether it's past, whether it's the way you deal with frustrations is through training, whatever the hell it is, it's so valuable for fighters for the mental health and everything else. And we don't have to go down that path, but more to keep yourself focused. That's where I'm interested in. To keep yourself, poised and where you need to be. You're like you said, you're frustrated. There's anxiety leading up to it. How do you channel that? How do you refocus yourself and go in there and just, isolate on that one thing, which is your opponent?
For a long time, I feel like I struggled with what is the right mindset to go into a fight. And that said, I feel like that is also a subjective thing. Like
I agree.
some guys need to be emotional. They get riled up, and for me, man, it's just like I'm a man of God, first of all, and like I know I've put in the work, and to me it's just like I leave it up to God. And what I mean is that when I do that, I don't stress about it takes so much pressure off my back, man, because then I can just go out there and just do my best. And that's honestly, man, like that's my mindset. I know I train so hard. So I just got to go out there and do my best. And my mindset also is if I do my best, if I perform at my best, then I can beat anybody on planet Earth at 170 pounds. I truly believe that. So it's just taking the pressure off of myself and just, yeah, man, like I said, I put it in God's hands and just go out there and try to do my thing.
And I can fully relate to that. Although I'm not a man of religion, I also am a man who's 5 years sober. So the idea of giving it to your higher power or giving it up to something else, the idea of it's not in your control. There's things that aren't in your control. You pass it up. It's not even your responsibility. You got to give that up to somebody else and just push through and do your job and do what you have to do. And that's why I love this, because it's relatable from a fighter's mindset, which is very extreme as far as you're going in there. It is a life or death scenario, but it relates all the way back to the average person. Your day to day, it's like no matter what, you got to let things go because you can't control everything, and you got to just go and do your job. So I appreciate that. It is a solid lesson to do, and not to overshare. I share that quite a bit. 5 years sober, and the idea is when you've
Good for
been
you,
through
brother.
certain battles and certain war with yourself, everything else is very, very simple. And it doesn't have to be alcohol. It could be just personal shit or whatever it is. Once you've overcome certain things, I can imagine even training and getting in the cage sometimes seems a little bit, like almost vacation to you. You get in there and you sort of get to go do what you love to do. So now for you, you have a solid fighter ahead of you. Christien Tremayne, a guy who, was going up against Nelson in his last fight, and Nelson was supposed to be this hot prospect coming up and maybe the one to sort of take his shine. Tremayne sort of just outworks him. But he's sort of a mixed bag. He's a well-rounded fighter, and he's got a mixed bag of submissions. And with the record right now, it's hard to see really where everybody is as far as their styles and what kind of fighter they're going to be at the end of the game. But for you, it's pretty obvious. You go in and finish people, right? So with your styles, how do you think your styles match up? And how do you see this fight finishing? Obviously, you don't need to give up strategy, but just sort of how do you see this sort of you guys coming together and this clash coming together?
Yeah, man. I definitely have a game plan. We'll put it that way. I think it's an interesting style matchup. I don't think it's really a secret that he's going to try to take me down, and I'm probably going to try to stand and bang. But yeah, man, he's got kind of that like plodding Thai kind of style, where I'm a little more bouncy. I always go into a fight expecting the worst. And what I mean is like, I can sit here and tell you what I think that I'm going to do and how the fight plays out. But I always go into fights, man, thinking like I got to fight off the worst case scenario. What happens if he comes out and drops me in 10 seconds? How do I prepare myself for these scenarios mentally? What happens if he's beating the crap out of me for 24 minutes and I got to come back and get the job done, I found like with him, like, I've heard some things that he said, and he's kind of like downplaying me. And I feel like that's like his way of coping with the fight. My way of coping with opponents, man, is that I almost put them on a really high pedestal. And, I don't know if that answers the question or
No,
not.
that's amazing, dude. Because that is valuable because all fighters look at things different. This is why I love sort of dissecting this because like a guy like Rafian Stotts, former Bellator champion,
I know
he is exactly.
Rafael. I've trained with Rafael.
Yeah, well, I was going to say Rufus Sports. You've probably been down there. He's of the same
So
mindset, right?
I was
He
just
wants
gonna
to be in
say,
the
man.
worst spot. Go ahead, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, shout out to Rafael, and man, I've trained with I've been to a couple of the best gyms in the world, and I knew Rafael. I think it might have been before he actually signed with Bellator, but there's a few guys that I've trained with, man, that I'm like I've trained with like all kinds of UFC guys and stuff like that, and I'm like, man, that guy's special,
He
Just
makes you
the
better. Anybody that's talked has said he makes you better. It seems.
just a handful of guys, man, and I can honestly say he's one of them. So shout out to Rafael.
And definitely one of the nicest guys in the world. I mean, he was on the Ariel Helwani show, which is obviously the biggest thing and what a lot of fighters want to get on, right? That's how you know you pretty much made it if you hit that show. And right after he finishes, seconds later, he jumps on with me, a no-name podcast from Canada. That shows you what kind of guy he is right there. So
Great dude,
great guy. But what I was going to say was his whole thing is in training, he puts himself in the worst positions. Does he believe honestly he's going to be there? No, he doesn't want to believe that. He doesn't want to buy into that. He doesn't want to do that at all. But he's going to put himself there anyways, just in case. And he puts himself in the worst spots. And everybody's different. Some people don't want to think that they're in the worst spots. They don't want to think negatively because they can't do that. So everybody's different. I definitely like that. Probably comes from a place of adversity. The idea that if you've been through, once again, adversity, you're not scared of it. So let's go back to it and dig in and figure out how to live through it. So now that is a question I usually ask. It's funny you sort of just spouted it out. It's the idea that what is that mindset when you're, pretty much down in a decision. You're the end of the fight. You're maybe down in volume, or you're down on takedowns, and he's probably got you edged out. What the hell are you going to do? And a lot of the time, when I'll ask fighters is what they're most scared of in the cage. And usually, what it is it's what you train to stay away from, whether it's being smothered on the ground or, knocked out on the feet, whatever the hell it is. Everybody's got their own fear that they work to try to stay away from because that's usually their weakness. For you, you've worked for years, like you said, you're a vet, you've been around, you've tried to shore up these weaknesses, but it starts with fear to defend yourself. So what was your biggest fear when you first started in the cage? And what is your fear? Because everybody's got them.
I'd say my initial fear, like when I first started fighting, was just, being embarrassed, like just like whatever it is, man. Like just losing, I guess, and I went a long time without losing, so that was my fear, man. Now, man, this might sound I don't know how it will come off, but as you were asking me that question, I was already thinking about it. And I'm like, I don't really fear anything. And I think honestly that just comes down to, like putting it in God's hands, and just knowing that again, man, I can't, don't get me wrong, I'm sure, say I lost this fight, I'll be bitter about it, maybe, likely. But that said, yeah, man, when I ground myself, I understand that, like, listen, man, I can look at myself in the mirror right now and be like, I put my heart and soul into this, So that said, what do I have to fear? Like I know I'm giving my absolute best. I know I'm gonna give my absolute best on Saturday night. So there's nothing to fear or be disappointed about.
And
That's
another
it.
great answer. It's a lot of fighters I'm expecting to hear like, I'll give the examples of being smothered or knocked out, and that's usually never the answer I get. It's usually lack of performance, not performing in front of people, people you train with, not
That's a
performing
good
in front of the
answer. That's a
fans,
good answer.
and
Yeah.
but that's a respectable thing, right? Like you want to
Yeah.
be the best version of yourself, and that's what you're putting the damn work in for, right? Like Josh Hill, that was his biggest thing was, and he worked on for years to try to figure out as he channeled this stuff through Bellator. So okay, now we got a belt on the line. Following you going in there and executing your game plan. What do you want for yourself? How much do you want to fight? How many times do you want to defend that belt? And it's not that I'm jumping on the bandwagon on one side or the other, although I am a little bit biased to House of Champions. The reality of the fact is you're going in there knowing that you're going to win the fight. If you win the fight, from there, how many times do you want to defend that belt this season?
Hopefully none, man. And all due respect to Fight League, right? Like I love them, and I'm going to appreciate being their champion, and they're amazing and all that, right? But hopefully this is my shot in the big show. That's what I'm hoping, right? Um, but otherwise, I'll defend it as many times as I need to defend it.
I was thinking maybe once might be the best case scenario, or sort of the worst case scenario, because if you defend it once, there's got to be a call at that point. If not, even after you win the belt, right? So for yourself, getting a call, obviously UFC is the epitome of things, but this whole PFL thing, Bellator, and what's going on there is quite interesting. Are you interested in the PFL and Bellator as well too? I mean, obviously you want to leave the door open for anything, but or is UFC your golden goose?
UFC would definitely be my golden goose. Purely, man, because that's kind of the journey I set myself on when I was like 13, 14 years old. Like the first time I watched UFC, like that was like what I fell in love with was that UFC brand, and just to have that under my name would just be such, you know, major accomplishment, man. Yeah.
And
Not
that's actually a good.
I was
Sorry,
gonna
go
say
ahead.
not to say that I'm not interested in PFL, but that's my heart's at in the UFC, man.
Well, even where you are right now, if you go back to that 13-year-old kid who's just stepping into rooms, maybe insecure about this and unsure about that, but also full of energy and wanting to get it all out, how do you think he would think about where you are right now?
I'd be proud, man. I'd be really, really proud, and I've thought about that many times, man. Like just thinking yeah, man, like for me to like even just to fight in a cage and to get to where I'm at, man, like coming from where I come from, man, is just like ridiculous. And the fact that I have a 9-1-1 record, and I'm considered one of the best guys in the country, and been on the cusp of the UFC. Like, yeah, man, like I would be really proud as that young guy.
And I don't mean to, get all into the feels, but I mean, I'm a girl dad. I got a daughter and stuff, so I'm soft as shit and I'm old as fuck. So, but the reality of the fact is it's good to really dissect what motivates and what really got you there in the first place, right? And when somebody is always envisioned as a killer, it's nice to see the soft side as well too. Fans love to hear that, see that, to sort of humanize the person that goes in there and destroys things. The juxtaposition is interesting. It's even how cruel Alin is, the nicest guy in the world. He invites my family over to the gym, gives us all sweaters, Merry Christmas. You're part of the family, as I'm just a fan with a little podcast on the street. And he goes in and you see him work pads session after session. Kyle Nelson, Diana Bobita, and then you. And the guy gets destroyed, but he absolutely loves it.
He loves it. Yeah, he loves it.
He absolutely does. I don't know how his body holds up, man. I can't imagine doing sessions back to back the way he does. It's absolutely crazy.
And that's what I like. That was kind of my mindset going out there too. It was like, it's a smaller gym, like in comparison to like these big mecha gyms that I've been to in the past. But I really believe in that, man. And for me, it's important to have like just like a tight knit, like,
Yep.
community of coaches and training partners, and that family kind of atmosphere,
Well, he gets definitely into dad mode, right? Like he turns into almost dad. Like you walk in the building and he's dad to pretty much everybody in there. So
Yeah, he's an amazing coach, man. Amazing coach, man. Yeah.
Now, is he going to be able to be out there for? I know sometimes it's compromising for him to get out there to your fights. Is he going to be able to be out there for the fight this weekend?
No, he
Oh no,
won't
he
be there.
has Deanna this weekend. Never mind. See, that's where the compromise will be.
I
That's where we need to get you on a UFC card, man.
Yeah. I didn't even know Deanna was actually fighting this weekend. But yeah, I've been working a lot with my boxing coach, like ahead of this fight, So that said, I kind of like the guys that I'm working with being in my corners for fights, Not to say like,
That makes sense.
I wouldn't love to have Alin here, but just ahead of the fact that I've done my whole training camp here. Yeah,
You need to have continuity in the corner. You can't have conflicting stuff. You need to have everything working together. And not a bad strategy going against a guy who's going to take you down, maybe a little less kicks, a little more hands. Not a bad way to approach it. So I will leave you right there, brother. Definitely appreciate your time. Honestly, I'd love to talk to you again. We have multiple breakdown shows that we do where we break down UFC fights. If you're into that kind of thing and breaking down fights is sort of fun, not everybody's into it. But either way, even just to pick your brain and talk, love to talk to you again. Christien Savoie, let's go get this belt, man.
Thank you, brother. Thanks so much for having me on. Thanks for what you're doing for the Canadian MMA scene too, man. You're doing great work. I love the videos.
Well, to me, I think that, I would have loved, and I've talked about it on shows in the past. One of my biggest reasons why I never made it to where I wanted to was I should have trained. I was around gyms, but I unfortunately had another career, and that was alcoholism. So it's one of my biggest regrets. So I can't go back now. I'm 40 years old. There's no way I can go train a little bit and this and that, but I'm not going back in time now. So there's got to be one way I can do it, right? So making videos like that, if you look at it before you're maybe about to go out a couple days out from a fight, whatever it is, hypes people up and gets people emotions going and the fans going. Absolutely love doing that stuff. So thank you very much for your time. Christien Savoie, let's go.
Fighting this Saturday night, February 3rd, for the inaugural FLA welterweight title versus Christian Tremayne. For you, I'll make a prediction. It'll either be a quick night. He's been talking a lot about breaking me and this and that. So as much as I'll never complain about a quick finish, it would be satisfying to drag him out and make him tired and break him. So I'll leave it at that.
And tune into the Donttap podcast.